صارت استراتيجية وهدفاً. هو المستقبل الذي نطمح إليه، هو التقاء ثنائية العلم والعمل لخلق بيئة زراعية مستدامة، عنوانها سننتج ما سنأكل.
دائما كان هناك عندي اهتمام شخصي للزراعة، وتحول هذا الاهتمام إلى فرصة عمل، وبعدها قررت بناء مزارعنا الخاصة في الإمارات. الزراعة العمودية هي عملية إنتاج المحاصيل الزراعية بأسطح مائية فوق بعض، وعند دمجها بأحدث التقنيات في هذا المجال تكون لنا القدرة على التحكم بالبيئة الداخلية للزراعة.
مجالنا مجال جديد، مو جديد بس للمنطقة، جديد عالميا. أكبر مميزة لنا احنا في المزرعة انبعاثات الكربون. طريقة زراعتنا هي تخفف من كل هالانبعاثات، لأن احنا نزرع عموديا، نزرع من الداخل، وبحيث هذه الطريقة نقدر احنا ما نستخدم أي مبيدات حشرية أو أي مواد كيماوية أخرى.
بستانك أكبر مزرعة عمودية في العالم، ننتج تقريبا 1,000,000 كيلوغرام من الخضرة سنويا، منها 7 أنواع خضار، وإن شاء الله في المستقبل بننتج أنواع أخرى من الخضرة. ويا هالتكنولوجيا وهالمزارع نقدر نزرع جميع أنواع الخضرة بغض النظر عن المواسم.
وبالنسبة لتوفير المياه فإننا نوفر 95 إلى 97% مقارنة بالمزارع التقليدية.
فاحنا مو بس طريقة زراعتنا هي توفر الماء، بس فوق هذا احنا نزيد بعض التقنيات لتدوير واستخدام الماء أكثر من مرة.
في مقولة تقول الزراعة حضارة، فإذا الشخص بيتبع الممارسات الزراعية الجيدة ويحافظ على البيئة اللي هو يعيش فيها، وبالتالي إحنا بنحافظ على البيئة للأجيال القادمة. الزراعة العضوية هي مو بس زراعة محاصيل، الزراعة العضوية هي بناء بيئة صحية للتربة، فإذا كانت عندنا تربة صحية فبذلك إحنا عندنا غذاء آمن. المنتجات العضوية ذات جودة عالية لأنها هي تنتج تحت معايير عالمية، ومن ضمنها قانون الزراعة العضوية في دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة. يعني البذور والأسمدة والمبيدات تكون تحت نظام معتمد عالمياً.
محطات الشباب للأمن الغذائي يعتبر أحد البرامج الأساسية من ضمن الخدمة الوطنية، الخدمة البديلة، والهدف من أساسه هو تعزيز المنظومة للأمن الغذائي للدولة. الدروس اللي تعلمناها تنشق إلى شقين، الشق الأول كان أكاديمي، الشق الثاني كان الشق الفعلي أو التطبيقي، فنزلنا المزارع وطبقنا كل ما تعلمناه من ناحية نظرية في الحقل. نتكلم عن الزراعة الخارجية، نتكلم على زراعات في الجرين هاوس.
برامج التوعية اللي تنشرها دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة وأنه يوصلون لجميع الفئات في الدولة، أعتقد أن هاي إحدى الأسباب أن تشجع الجيل الجديد أنه يتطورون في هالمجال.
لازم مسؤولية علينا أن احنا نسوي بيئة ابتكار، حيث أن كوادر المستقبل هم اللي يقدرون يوسعون ويطبقون ويكملون دربنا.
تقدم في مجال الذكاء الاصطناعي سيتيح للأجيال القادمة بتوفير كافة المحاصيل الزراعية من فاكهة وخضروات، فبالتالي بيكون عندهم محاصيل مستدامة، محاصيل آمنة، ومحاصيل صحية.
كل حي في أرض أباه يزرع، أحضر له الماء وأحضر له التسوية وأحضر له كل شيء. القادر يزرع واللي ما بقادر أنا بزرع له. في كل أرض فيها ماء وفيها تستوي الزراعة أنا بزرع له.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الفريق سمو الشيخ سيف بن زايد آل نهيان نائب رئيس مجلس الوزراء وزير الداخلية، سمو الشيوخ أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، الضيوف الكرام، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. اسمحوا لي بداية بالتعريف عن نفسي. أخوكم أحمد غازي الشيباني، مدير مشروع وادي تكنولوجيا الغذاء، ويشرفني اليوم أن أتولى مهمة إدارة هذا الحوار في هذا المجلس الكريم، محاضرة بعنوان التكنولوجيا الزراعية ومستقبل الغذاء. سيلقيها السيد ستيوارت أودا، رائد أعمال في مجال تكنولوجيا الزراعة ورئيس التنفيذي لشركة الاسكلايف، حيث سيقوم محدثنا بإلقاء الضوء على أهمية الزراعة للحياة البشرية على مدى العصور، وكيف أن الطلب المتزايد على الغذاء واستهلاك الموارد الطبيعية يتطلب النظر إلى حلول مبتكرة للأمن الغذائي المستدام. وكما سيستعرض المحاضر الطرق المختلفة للتقنيات والابتكار الزراعي، وسيشاركنا رؤيته وأفكاره في هذا المجال. ونلفت عنايتكم إلى أن المحاضرة ستكون باللغة الإنجليزية، وبإمكانكم استخدام السماعات لمتابعة الترجمة الفورية. And now, please join me in welcoming Mr. Stewart to begin his lecture.
Thank you very much. Your Highnesses, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is such an honor to be here today. I'm so excited to speak to you about the intersection of agriculture and technology. But first, I'd like to give a very brief self-introduction. I am a former investment banker turned urban farmer. And maybe the shortest way to explain how I ended up in agriculture is fate. You see, my Japanese last name is Oda, which literally translates to small farm. And my team and I have been building small, modular, vertical farms for nearly a decade. But besides being a small farm, one of the main reasons that I decided to enter into the agriculture industry is because I am an impatient optimist, which is one of the core values of the Gates Foundation. Learning about the incredible journey that food takes to get to supermarkets and homes around the world was actually my personal starting point into the agriculture industry over 10 years ago. And the more that I learned about the amazing work being done by so many individuals and organizations, the more optimistic that I became. But the more that I learned about the complexities and vulnerabilities and inefficiencies, the more impatient I became. These are some of the moonshots that my team and I are striving towards. These are the goals that we are optimistic will get accomplished one day, and we are too impatient to wait for someone else to do it first. These are the reasons why we get out of bed every morning. Agri-tech has the unique opportunity to not only contribute to food security by enabling local food production, but the sector can also have a profound impact on everything from biodiversity preservation to space exploration and even human wellness. In fact, plants have been used as medicine for thousands of years, and there are novel technologies that are looking to harness this even further. But before we look to the future, let's first explore the past. It's actually very fitting that I'm giving this presentation in the Middle East, given the fact that the origins of human agriculture can be traced back 12,000 years to the Fertile Crescent, which is a region just north of the UAE. The discovery of agriculture ended countless cycles of mass migration in search of food and basic necessities, and it allowed for civilization to flourish. The diet and lifestyle and society that farming enabled changed everything from our bone structure and density to our brain function and chemistry. But more than anything, agriculture provided us with predictability, and in many cases, prosperity and even peace. And this allowed us to dedicate time and resources into activities that would become the very foundation of science and technology, of economics and finance, philosophy and religion, and art and culture. Farming gave us permanence, and this permanence reassured our ancestors that they could think longer term, they could make investments, that they could undertake incredibly ambitious projects. Simply put, our transition from hunter-gatherers to farmers allowed humans to congregate, connect, and then to collaborate in ways that were simply not possible in the nearly 300,000-year history of Homo sapiens and the 6 million-year evolution of our ancestors. And this newfound opportunity to collaborate, coupled with success in the field, translated into major shifts in our society and demographics. For example, the largest known hunter-gatherer communities were no more than 100 people. And within just a few thousand years of practicing agriculture, there were cities that housed over 1 million individuals. And if we fast forward to today, some of the largest urban and metropolitan city centers have a population of over 30 million residents. In terms of employment, virtually every person in a hunter-gatherer community was directly related in sourcing food. And this number is closer to 27% today. Highly industrialized countries like the United States had 90% employment in agriculture just in the 1800s, and this is just 1.4% today. This unlocking of vast labor resources, as well as the establishment of these mega-scale, complex societies, led to the emergence of new and specialized professions as people were able to dedicate more time to creative, innovative, academic, and entrepreneurial endeavors. So, what does the agricultural industry look like today? Today, agriculture is a massive global industry that encompasses everything from genetics and production to logistics and retail. Now, when it comes to the production of staple crops, the landscape is dominated by a very small handful of countries, including the United States, China, and India. In fact, just 5 countries are responsible for the majority of staple crop production, as well as over 30 different types of fruits, vegetables, nuts, dairies, and food products. The pandemic exposed many of the vulnerabilities of the global agricultural supply chain. And to be honest, it is no wonder when so much production and the world relies so much on such a small handful of countries. And things have become concentrated because all of the top agricultural producers have 3 things in common, besides nice weather. They have abundant labor, abundant land, and abundant resources. The top 5 agricultural producers are home to 43% of the world's entire population. They have access to 78% of all the arable land on Earth, and they own 32% of all the natural resource value on the planet. Now, one of the things that gets overlooked when we talk about the agricultural industry is actually its sheer economic size. If the agricultural value chain was a country, it would have the second highest GDP at $20 trillion, just behind the United States and just ahead of China. In fact, the production of food and animal feed would be the 5th largest economy at $3.7 trillion, and food waste alone would be the 15th largest economy at $1.2 trillion. The agricultural industry is so massive that the waste stream, the economic value of the waste, is a $1 trillion opportunity. This massive market size is translating into truly mega-scale companies. Excluding state-owned entities, of the 8 companies, the private companies that have revenues of over $100 billion, 3 of them, including companies like Cargill, are linked directly to the agricultural value chain. In fact, the biggest public company by revenue, which is Walmart, which had over $500 billion of revenue last year, over 50% of its sales came from the sale of food and agricultural products. If there are any aspiring entrepreneurs, and you're looking to build a startup in a truly massive, global, and critical industry, they really don't come much larger than the agricultural industry. However, as you would imagine for such a large industry, the agricultural value chain consumes enormous amounts of resources. Today, the agriculture industry uses 49% of all of the habitable land and 72% of all the freshwater reserves. Just to put this into perspective, the agriculture industry uses 30 times more land than all of the space developed for human settlement, including homes, roads, bridges, airports. And the industry consumes more water than all of the countries on planet Earth, excluding India and China. Also, 26% of global greenhouse gas emissions comes from the agricultural value chain, which would make it the #1 polluting country. As the global population steadily increases and the demand for agricultural products continues to rise, I think we can all agree that the agricultural industry needs to find more sustainable, climate-resilient methods of production, processing, and logistics. So, what does the future of agriculture look like? Let me first lay out the challenge that's ahead of us. In 2050, our global population is projected to reach just shy of 10 billion, and 2 in every 3 people will live in urban city centers. In order to feed this massive population, we will need to increase our agricultural output by over 70% over current levels. Just to put this number into perspective, in terms of tonnage, the amount of food that we have to grow over the next 30 to 40 years is more than the last 12,000 years combined. And we need to make this happen using significantly less land and resources, as well as hundreds of millions of less farmers as they leave the field to retirement and urbanization. Basically, we need to grow a lot more food using a lot less resources and people. There aren't that many industries that have such a daunting task ahead of it, and also an industry in which failure is not an option. This is where agricultural technology enters into the discussion. Agri-tech companies are made up of scientific researchers, hardware and software engineers, manufacturing operators, as well as finance and marketing professionals that are all taking their unique skill sets and experience and passions and applying it to addressing the very challenges that I just mentioned. Over the past couple of years, agri-tech companies around the world have been accomplishing incredible technological breakthroughs to grow fresh produce, meat substitutes, as well as substitutes to plastic much more reliably and much more sustainably. First, indoor vertical farms, like the ones that you saw in the video, grow fresh produce in controlled environment facilities using racks that can extend 14 to 16 floors high. These plant factories can grow hundreds of crop varieties each year, regardless of the arable land that's available or even the climate outside. Indoor vertical farms have actually even been deployed in Antarctica to simulate what it's like to grow fresh produce in space. Next, biofermentation facilities manufacture proteins and food additives in highly specialized stainless steel tanks, rather than raising animals across millions of hectares of land. There are a number of companies using this technology to cultivate everything from fish, beef, lamb, chicken, and dairy products without ever having to raise a single animal for slaughter. Third, a number of agri-tech companies are looking deep into nature for solutions. These companies are conducting research into novel pea and fruit varieties to process into plant-based meat alternatives, which are much more sustainable to produce and much healthier for us to consume. The texture of these plant-based alternatives is becoming indistinguishable to animal origin products through the development of novel food processing techniques. Fourth, massive insect farms are being built to harness the incredible appetite and the natural digestive process of insects to upcycle organic waste and supplement the current waste management capabilities. Not only are insects significantly more sustainable to farm intensively, they are very effective at breaking down waste into nutrient-rich fertilizers for farmers to use. Also, the larvae and adult insects can be processed into everything from essential oils and highly nutritious food additives, as well as into fish feed, animal feed, and even pet food. And finally, mushroom and various fungus varieties are being cultivated and processed into everything from plastic and animal origin-free leathers, as well as packaging materials to replace styrofoam. Mushroom and fungus farming require little more than sawdust, organic material, and a little bit of electricity, and it's a very promising biodegradable alternative to many types of plastics that we use today. There are so many incredible technologies that I couldn't highlight today, and they are all developing unique solutions to produce food, animal feed, and sustainable materials. But there are three critical and common factors among all of these innovations. First, none of these technologies require abundant resources, arable land, or a favorable climate. The limiting factors of the agricultural industry for the past 12,000 years are no longer. Every country now has the opportunity to ensure its own food and nutritional security. And as these technologies mature, there is a very near and real future in which billions of people around the world will be consuming a majority of their diet from facilities like these. The second common factor among these new solutions is extreme productivity and efficiency. Indoor vertical farms can grow over 300 times more food per square meter compared to conventional farms, while using 100 times less water and no chemical pesticides. Similarly, biofermentation facilities require a tiny fraction of land, resources, and even the time it takes to grow high-quality proteins, while generating an order of magnitude less waste compared to the livestock industry. The third and perhaps the most important common factor is the dramatic cost reductions that are already being achieved by this industry. Moore's Law and the trend of ever-increasing performance and affordability is, I think, something that we all take for granted. For example, in the hardware space, computers and smartphones have 1,000 to 12,000 times more processing power than just 10 to 15 years ago, while being 96 to 99% lower cost. In the healthcare space, the cost of sequencing the human genome went from $1 billion in 2013 to now less than $1,000, a factor of 1 million times improvement. Also, the time it takes to sequence the genome now takes 1 to 2 days, compared to 13 years when we first attempted this. This cutting-edge research was critical in our race to develop a COVID vaccine in record time, and this technology is already adding value to the agricultural industry. And finally, to the agritech space, which is a complicated combination of hardware and biology. It's been following a very similar trend as well. For example, indoor-grown fresh produce cost around $2,000 per kg back in 2013 and is around $5 today, and it's expected to reach cost parity to traditional farms before 2030. But maybe a little bit more impressive, lab-grown meat cost $2.3 million per kg to produce back in 2013 and is estimated to cost around $22 today. This is a factor of 100,000 times improvement. And experts predict that cultivated meat will reach cost parity to the traditional livestock industry by or before 2030. We live in very exciting times. The agricultural industry is at a true inflection point, and the next wave of exponential technologies and growth is just taking off, supported by two key elements. The first is awareness and momentum. Institutional investors have been pouring into the agritech space over the last couple of decades and have invested over $200 billion into the sector. And this has led to the exponential rise of startups working on addressing the very challenges that I mentioned earlier. Globally, there are over 1,700 startups that have successfully raised funding, and while a majority of these companies are currently based in the US and Europe, there are many companies across Asia and the Middle East that are quickly gaining momentum. The second element that's pushing the industry forward is the rapid innovation that's happening in several critical technical domains. Exponential and enabling technologies like cloud computing, artificial intelligence, and biotechnology are quickly being incorporated by agritech companies to improve everything from productivity, efficiency, to sustainability and affordability. Despite the many challenges that the industry faces, the future of food has never been more promising than today. Just 10 years ago, I think there would be quite a bit of anxiety around how we would feed 10 billion people in 2050. But the agri-tech sector is building the solutions, and we are well on our way to feeding the world more sustainably, more equitably here on Earth. And as we look to space and the stars, agri-tech will play an even more critical role in enabling human space exploration and colonization. while SpaceX and other rocket companies are building the critical infrastructure to transport humans and cargo to space, sustaining life beyond planet Earth will not be easy or cheap. What you see here is my amateur calculations of how much it would cost the annual food expense of somebody living in the UAE, the International Space Station, the Moon, and Mars. I try to be as scientific as possible in my calculations, but the point is, if humans want to become a multi-planetary species one day, agri-tech, by definition, will be at the core of any successful mission. So for those of you who are looking for a career change, keep in mind that space needs doctors, engineers, and farmers, and not accountants, consultants, and hopefully no lawyers. So what does all this mean for the UAE? Agri-tech is still a very new sector, and smaller and more agile countries like Singapore, Switzerland, and even the UAE have already been attracting entrepreneurs, investors, and partners to really lead the next wave of technological innovation and commercialization. The UAE possesses many of the key ingredients to attract great talent and great companies, and has the opportunity to build vibrant ecosystems by supporting early and growth stage companies that are committed to true innovation. The UAE has stated their commitment to becoming the world's most food secure country by 2051, and has developed a comprehensive national strategy and roadmap to accomplishing this ambitious target. This clarity not only provides assurance to its citizens and residents, but also acts as a source of inspiration to the next generation of agri-tech innovators. Also, the UAE has launched numerous accelerator programs and startup competitions, establishing the country as an innovation hub. Actually, my team and I were first welcomed into the UAE back in 2016 through one of these incredible programs. Next, in terms of talent, investors and startup communities in the UAE are quickly expanding and maturing. A startup culture that was originally built around integration is quickly transitioning to one of innovation. Homegrown technical talent, as well as international experts, are flocking to the region, inspired by an ambitious, purpose-driven commitment to building cities that are more sustainable and more inclusive. Also, while the new generation of innovators may be lacking in traditional farming experience, they are grounded in a strong STEM academic background. And the UAE has a very competitive education system to continue to support and nurture the next generation of homegrown talent. It won't be long before Emirati companies are exporting critical agri-tech solutions to the MENA region and beyond. Finally, the UAE has been forging strategic partnerships with major global companies and organizations. From hosting the World Expo last year to hosting COP28 next year, the UAE has been leading the conversation on next-generation technologies and global regulatory policy for the past several years. So let me end by summarizing some of the key points. The Middle East was the origin of human agriculture, and it would be so fitting that the next generation of innovation is led by this region once again. Agriculture today is a massive global industry, but controlled by a very small handful of countries and companies consuming an enormous amount of resources. But recently, there have been some incredible technological breakthroughs that are set to make the industry more productive, efficient, sustainable, and affordable. And the UAE is already establishing itself as not only a hub of innovation, but also as a champion and a leader in the agri-tech space. And so given this context, there are a lot of things that we can all do today and tomorrow in order to help out the industry. For example, eating less meat can dramatically reduce the industry's land and carbon footprint. Only 18% of calories and 37% of proteins come from the livestock industry, but it accounts for 80% of the land use and the majority of the carbon emissions. Changing all of our daily diets can have a huge impact on the environment. Also, eating more local and diverse foods can be a great option as well. 75% of the world's food supply comes from just 12 plants and 5 animal species. Greater diversity in our diets is essential for the industry to become less resource intensive and also to ensure local and regional food security. Finally, I encourage you to learn more about the wonderful world of food and agriculture. Given the sheer size and complexity, there can never be enough passionate innovators working on addressing the challenges of the industry. Agritech is one of the most multidisciplinary industries on the planet, comprised of scientists, engineers, and even bankers, and offers an unprecedented opportunity to make a positive social and environmental impact. You'll be relieved to know that despite all of the challenges, there are a lot of really smart and driven, impatient optimists that are working tirelessly to move the industry forward. But for those of you who are still a little bit too optimistic and a little bit too impatient, the agritech industry is waiting for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart, for this inspiring presentation. Now I would like to begin with the Q&A session. As you mentioned earlier, food waste is a global challenge. What kind of agritech solutions that currently exist to tackle this problem?
Yeah, this is a great question. Food waste happens in 2 places: before food reaches the market and after it's reached the market. And in developing countries, a lot of the food waste happens before food reaches the market. And a lot of the food waste in developed countries happens after. And the great thing about a lot of the agritech solutions that are happening today is that they allow food to be produced much closer to the consumer. And so this can significantly reduce waste before something reaches the market. And also by extending shelf life, it can dramatically reduce food waste after it reaches the market. And so a lot of the technologies about localizing food production is contributing to reducing food waste.
So in your opinion, Mr. Stewart, how can agritech companies help to inspire the youth and the next generation of innovators?
Yeah, this is a great question too. My son will be 12 years old when all of the United Nations SDGs need to be accomplished. And I'm hoping that when he graduates college, that he will be torn between working in finance or working in agriculture. And really, in order to inspire the next generation, engagement is one of the best tools. And so getting communities and families to come to indoor farms, to open up these sessions, even having these kinds of dialogues is incredibly important in terms of inspiring the next generation. And we're trying to do some of our part by having agri-education programs that we pair with our indoor farms, as well as agri-therapy programs that we run with our program, where we can be more inclusive in how we engage with the local community.
So energy consumption can be incredibly high in indoor vertical farms. What new technologies are being developed to reduce electricity in these farms?
Yeah, indoor vertical farms uses energy mostly for lighting as well as for climate control. And there are a number of companies that are developing solutions to develop ever more efficient LEDs and lighting, as well as developing climate control systems that are significantly more efficient. And so it's being tackled in 2 very different ways. And also, kind of an indirect way that this is being addressed is developing genetics that are more suited for indoor farming. And this can increase the yield dramatically for indoor vertical farms.
So as you know, food security requires the production of stable crops, like wheat and rice. So what type of promising technology can help grow them more sustainably?
Yeah, this is the great thing about agricultural technology, is that it doesn't just include hardware or genetics, but also includes digital and data services as well. Farmers can make the right decision if they're just given the right information at the right time. And so there are a lot of technologies around IT, as well as data analytics, and even satellite data analytics that are being used to give more insightful information to farmers in a more timely way. And all these things are contributing to significant improvements in productivity as well as efficiency.
So with new food technologies such as plant-based protein and cellular agriculture, how do you see the change in consumer habits?
Yeah, with any new industry, there's a lot of hesitance to adopt it. And what's really exciting is that there are so many companies working on taste and texture so that when somebody decides to choose plant-based or cellular ag, that they don't feel like they're making a sacrifice, and that they're just switching from one product to another. And so what's exciting is all the new technologies, not just in the production space, but in the processing space, that are being deployed today, is really making it much easier for people to adopt these new products. And also in terms of awareness, I think people are starting to understand that plant-based alternatives can be significantly more nutritious in some cases, and also much more sustainable for the environment. And so I think with the combination of food becoming much more tasting and texture is becoming much similar to the current animal origin products is one thing, and then the other thing would be that people are really understanding that there's huge benefits to making the switch.
So in reference to our discussion earlier, how can the agri-tech sector continue to develop in the UAE and globally?
Yeah, this is a great question. In order for any industry, not just the agri-tech industry, to be successful, it requires three things. It requires technology, it requires business models and partnerships, and then it requires policy. So technology needs to be developed by the innovators of the world, and they need to figure out how to sell those things. But one thing that is often overlooked is policy. And so this is the reason why countries like Luxembourg, that has a population that's less than Alain, is leading in the space policy space, is that they chose that this element that's often overlooked is something that's incredibly critical. And so there are a lot of innovators here and around the world that's working on the technology and the business model and partnership side. And I think one of the areas where the UAE can really lead is on the policy side. And it makes and really opens up an opportunity for innovators from around the world to come here and move much faster.
So I would like to ask, which of your moonshots projects are you most excited about and why?
To be honest, I'm most excited about free food. I think on my phone, I have very little applications that I pay for. And this business model around free software products is something that we are all used to and we benefit from every day. And one of the things that our team is trying to do is find ways to find a business model and a partnership that would allow us to offer essentially free food. So one of the examples would be if we worked with a life or health insurance company, and by choosing to purchase local healthy products, that if they spent $1 on that product, that their premium would go down by $1. So essentially the food becomes free. And I think there are a lot more innovative ways around food that doesn't create a product in a transactional relationship, and something that can be much closer to how we consider, for example, early education.
So for the final question, what is the next big challenge for indoor vertical farming and the industry?
Yeah, I mean, this ties maybe a little bit into another moonshot, which is farming off of planet Earth. But one of the big challenges of indoor farming is not only to reduce costs, but expand variety. And right now, indoor vertical farms are great at producing highly nutritious products, but they're not really cost-effective in producing high-quality calories. And so in terms of ensuring food safety, security, but also in terms of farming off of planet Earth, one of the next big challenges for indoor vertical farming is to be able to grow calories more sustainably and more affordably.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Thank you. في الختام، تناولت محاضرة اليوم الطرق المختلفة للتقنيات والابتكار الزراعي، وأهم التطورات في هذا المجال، وأهميته لمستقبل يراعي البيئة ويحافظ على المياه ويعزز الأمن الغذائي. أود أن أتقدم بجزيل الشكر إلى الحضور الكرام لحسن استماعهم، وإلى السيد ستوارت أودا لمحاضرته. ويشرفني أن أدعو الفريق سمو الشيخ سيف بن زايد آل نهيان والمشاركين في المقطع الفيديو عبد العزيز الملة، عبد الله الكعبي، منصور فلكناز للتفضل بالصعود على المنصة لأخذ صورة جماعية. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
في لحظات التأمل الصادقة فقط يمكننا أن ندرك أن أعظم ما بلغته البشرية كان نتيجة مباشرة للمعرفة. نتحدث هنا عن تلك المعرفة التي تحفز الساعي إليها على وضع توقيعه الخاص على كل ما يحصله داخل المدرسة. أطفالنا اليوم هم عقول الغد، هم اختراعاته التي ستقول الأجيال القادمة أن تاريخ الإنسانية لن يتوقف ما دام في صفوفنا